Hello and welcome to Archvelder's Hacks with Archvelder and his amazing hacks. So in the War Within expansion a lot changed, and specifically a lot changed to do with gold farming. There's a particular farm which has opened up a lot of exciting possibilities that are completely new. Now this video is not about the specific gold farm in question, which is already relatively well known. It is about the stuff that you can do with it. You need to watch this video all the way through to get the value from it. You will not get any value from it if you just watch the first few minutes. Some of the angles here can be really game breaking. So a month or two back, multiple YouTubers and guide makers began talking about a cloth farm in the Darkflame cleft dungeon. There was some brilliant analysis, but there are a lot of secrets here that haven't been published, even though the farm is fairly well established. So the basics of the farm are simply this. You max out tailoring, as I'm showing here, to maximize the amount of cloth that drops from humanoids. This is where 90% of the value is coming from. You must spend the knowledge points, as I'm showing here, or you won't get enough cloth drops from the farm for it to be worthwhile. But to give you a rough guide as to how to do this and how long it takes, basically you just pick up tailoring and find items which give you tailoring knowledge points. These are scattered all over War Within zones. I've got a link to a Wowhead guide below. Then you take the daily quest to fill up crafting orders and keep going until you have enough knowledge points. That's 30 points in each of the sections I've shown. When that's done, you simply queue for the follower dungeon, Darkflame Cleft, which, because it's a follower dungeon, will pop instantly. Now, there are two basic methods I've seen here. The first is to run all the trash up to the first boss. The second is just to clear the first room and then re-queue. So far, I've just been covering the basic information. Now, it's worth mentioning here that many of the videos and guides on this farm came out before Blizzard changed their follower dungeon rules, so that you could run a maximum of 50 follower dungeons per day. There is no hourly lockout anymore, just a maximum of 50 per day. This noticeably changes the strategy. Farming the first room is the most efficient in terms of gold per minute invested, but you can do it in 30 seconds. So you're going to be hitting follower dungeons instance cap in 25 minutes. That's not very long. Doing the second room is less efficient, but it enables you to farm for longer periods. There is an exploit which allows you to bypass instance lockout and farm Darkflame Cleft infinitely. However, I don't want to make that public since it would very likely get fixed immediately. So for the time being, that is exclusive to my Patreon. Sorry, I can't make everything public. I think you'll see as you watch the rest of this video that I'm giving away some very powerful information for free, so don't judge me too harshly for that. We'll be discussing a workaround for people who just want to farm the first room in a second, but it is worth mentioning here this amazing little tip from a comment on a video about this farm. If you just jump while re-queuing for the dungeon, then you'll find that you don't get ported out of Darkflame Cleft and ported back to the game world. But you do get the option to re-enter the instance. This allows you to skip a loading screen and farm significantly faster. The first room approach is the best approach for those who have very limited time to farm. For players who want to farm for more than half an hour, however, it is better to clear all the trash up to the first boss. But even the amazing genius tip to jump and re-queue isn't the best thing about this amazing farm. You see, follower dungeons have this fantastic property. You can queue for them anywhere in the world. It doesn't have to be inside War Within content. It can literally be anywhere in the game world. This means that any kind of short-term buff you can find that survives through a port can be used in Darkflame Cleft. These can be damage or survivability based, but you can also use speed buffs, even flying as I'm demonstrating here. Using buffs like these is very overpowered. It is best used with the approach where you clear all the trash up to the first boss, not the approach where you just clear the first room. The reason being that the first room strategy benefits greatly from the jump exploit, and you can't use that if you want to re-enter the world to collect buffs from outside it. What buffs can we use? There is comprehensive information about this type of buff on my Patreon, but I'll give you two for free, like a crack peddler at the school gates. Here's one in Drustvar that gives you a time warp style haste buff. And here's one for mages in Northrend, which gives you a 25% haste and speed buff. The speed is really useful here. I'm sure you can find others. It's a lot of fun. Now, some might consider this approach to be a bannable exploit. I personally would consider that to be very unlikely, but if you want a completely white hat approach, there's an alternative. Find an area with mobs that drop something lucrative, or a cluster of profession nodes you can farm. Note that you just need a lot of mobs. They don't have to respawn quickly at all, as you would need with most open world gold farms that you would do exclusively. To see why this works so well, imagine that you could just pick the same herb or mine the same node or kill the same mobs and they would instantly respawn in front of you. You can imagine how profitable that might be. That's actually essentially what we're doing here. You have no downtime because you can re-enter Darkflame Cleft and farm the mobs during the respawn time in world. Also, you can take advantage of the fact that your cooldowns are recovering whilst you're outside of the dungeon, making your damage per second higher whilst you are farming in Darkflame Cleft. The combination of the two things is amazing for keeping your profits up. It also greatly extends the amount of time you can do this before you hit instance lockout. There's a powerful synergy here. You could do this with literally any type of content which makes you gold. It doesn't have to be restricted to the War Within content. And indeed, you don't have to use Darkflame Cleft if you can find something profitable in another follower dungeon. Now, it's worth adding that you can go to the physical entrance of Darkflame Cleft in the Rigging Deeps. There you can enter the normal dungeon, and there you have the normal 10 instance per hour lockout. It's completely separate from the 50 follower dungeon cap, so you can do it independently or at the same time as the follower dungeon runs. So that will effectively extend your farming time. If you don't have good gear or a tank, then don't try and solo all the trash up to the first boss. It's tough without followers. You can just kill all the weaker trash in the first chamber. When farming Darkflame Cleft on any mode, use auto loot. I've not been doing that here so you can see what type of drops you'll get. So here's a sample of the loot I got from doing 10 runs of the 1 room and 2 room approaches respectively. When you break all these numbers down based on the auction house prices at the time of writing, you'll see that for the single room approach, if you can clear it in 20 seconds per run, which is possible, using the jump and skip loading screen method, you are looking at just over 43,000 gold per hour invested. But of course, we can only do that for around half an hour a day before lockout. So it's essentially a nice burst of gold for a short period. Now, if you look at the 2 rooms method, assuming you can clear both rooms in 2 minutes, then you are looking at about 35,000 gold per hour. But you can do that for almost 2 hours a day. And if you can enhance it with world buffs, or using the open world farming method I mentioned, you are looking at more than 50,000 gold per hour easily, or you'll be able to do it for much longer. Now, this is the best basic farm you can do in WoW, where the items will sell quickly. You will see people making claims about how you can make up to 100k per hour doing other farms, and mostly these claims don't really stack up in practice, because you are either going to have to play the auction house a bit to sell some rare item, Or with 2x4 farms, for example, they're not really sustainable because the gold per hour tends to disintegrate as people join and leave the group. As I stated earlier, if you are serious about gold farming, you'll want to join my Patreon to find out how to bypass instance lockout, which really makes a difference here, but also to get hold of some of the juiciest open world buffs.